Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Versus. Today we are tackling the debut album by the Jimi Hendrix Experience titled Are You Experienced from 1967 on Track Records in the UK and Reprise in the US. From the cover art to the tracks, these two albums are more like cousins than siblings in their differences. But given that the US version was released a full 3 months after its UK counterpart, is it an improvement or a step backward? Let's find out. Leading up to the recording of this album, it's important to remember that Hendrix was a struggling musician. I know it's kind of hard to believe. He made ends meet by playing on other people's records as well as playing in backing bands for such headliners including Little Richard, Wilson Pickett, and even the Isley Brothers. But it wasn't enough. He just wasn't content to keep playing the same songs in the same order night after night. He wanted the spotlight. So in 1967, he moved to New York City and got a residency at the Café Wa in Greenwich Village, playing under the banner of Jimmy James and the Blue Flames. It was here that he got the attention of former Animals member Chas Chandler. Interested in managing bands himself, Chas quickly signed Hendrix and brought him to London, where they recruited members Mitch Mitchell on the drums and Noel Redding on the bass. Together they formed the Jimi Hendrix Experience, with Chas responsible for Jimmy changing his spelling to J-I-M-I. The band was signed by Track Records, a new label formed by the managers of The Who. The recording sessions for the album took place over a 5-month period, beginning in October of 1966 through April of 1967. Keep in mind, they took a lot of breaks during this time, playing clubs around Europe and even making a few TV appearances.
Hey, fantastic sounds, real psychedelic sounds from the Jimi Hendrix Experience.
One of their most notable performances took place on January 11th, 1967 at the Bag O' Nails Club in London. Here, they impressed an audience that included such luminaries as John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Mick Jagger, Eric Clapton, Pete Townsend, Brian Jones, and Jeff Beck, among many others. Talk about a legendary crowd. If I had a time machine, I would go back to that date. Anyway, Hey Joe was the first single released from these sessions, and it was also the first song recorded. It came out in the UK in mid-December 1966. Purple Haze came out next in March of 67. The third and final single was The Wind Cries Mary, coming out in May, but Purple Haze was still in the charts at this time, sitting at number 3. Now this is unusual because at this time it was unheard of to release another single while you still had one in the top 10. But Track Records did this on purpose because they wanted to show that Hendrix wasn't just a loud guitar player. He could also bring it down a notch. Slow things down, get a little necking time with your sweetie. The album was finally released on May 12, 1967, nearly 6 months after the release of their first single. It peaked at the number 2 spot in the UK charts, just below Sgt. Pepper's. By this time, the Experience was a certifiable hit in the UK and Europe, but they were relatively unheard of in the US, and it was time to change that. Reprise Records released Hey Joe as a single on May 1st, but it failed to crack even the top 100. So they followed it up with a 1-2 punch of Purple Haze backed by The Wind Cries Mary as a double A side, but that didn't do much better, peaking at number 65. Things were looking bleak for the band, but their big break came with a little help from their friend, Paul McCartney. He insisted they be put on the bill at the Monterey Pop Festival, and it was this performance that really propelled Hendrix into the mainstream. Not only did he play phenomenally well, but when he burned his guitar and smashed it, it sent shockwaves throughout the United States. It was from this performance and the subsequent exposure that Reprise agreed to release Are You Experienced in the US. It hit store shelves on August 23rd, but with some notable changes. Let's check them out. Before I get started, I want to point out that my US copy is a 1968 stereo pressing, and this is a more recent 2013 200-gram reissue of the original UK mono edition. Apart from the center labels, this edition does a bang-up job recreating the original UK release. And I'm comparing both the mono and stereo because these were the most common or popular versions of the album in their respective countries. As far as I understand it, the original UK pressing run was in mono only. Starting with the UK version, truth be told, I never saw this cover before, and that's primarily because I grew up in the US and these just aren't that common. I didn't really actively seek out imports in my youth, so I was surprised that this was the cover that they chose for his debut. It feels rather understated to me, but maybe that's on purpose because it was important to their management that the band's faces be recognizable. I do find it very funny that even Chris Stamp, the man who designed this cover, admitted later on that it wasn't very great. Even Hendrix himself didn't like it. So when it came time to release the album in America, a new cover was designed by Carl Ferris. He also took the photo, and I like this design so much better. I mean, this is how I picture Hendrix. Fisheye photo, very loud, colorful clothing, these colors that pop, these two fonts. I mean, this is iconic. Interestingly enough, Ferris' original design was rejected as being too costly, but it was to feature a gatefold design with a textured cover. I don't know why they don't try to recreate what he originally wanted to do, because that would be an awesome, cool, unbelievable reissue. I would totally buy that. I would buy that up. Imagine if this was textured where this pops out. I don't know if they call that embossing. That would be so cool, man. Flipping over to the back, you get another cool photo of the band. And this write-up is good too. It does a decent job of hyping up the band to a potential buyer. Going back to the UK version, I do like the back cover as you get more photos of the band. Although, if you didn't know what Hendrix was doing in this picture, you would be very confused. One thing to note is that this reissue leaves out the mini bios for each of the band, and I'm not really sure why they do that, other than the fact that, hey, you bought this, you probably know who this band is by now. I think it goes without saying, my vote is for the US version. I just find it's a better designed cover. It's undeniably iconic. What else can I say? The US release basically took the UK version, got rid of 3 songs, Red House, Can You See Me, and Remember, and then added the 3 UK singles, Hey Joe, Purple Haze, and The Wind Cries Mary. Then they shuffled all the tracks around, slapped on a new cover, and boom, 5 times platinum status. Now some of you may be asking, why did the UK release not feature those 3 awesome singles to begin with? Well, as I've stated in other videos, at this time in the UK, albums and singles were seen as 2 different animals. Rarely would you find already released singles on a new album. To do so otherwise would be seen in poor taste. This happened a lot to the Beatles. The most famous case I can think of is the Sgt. Pepper sessions, with Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever being released as a double A-side single ahead of the release of the album. Unlike the Beatles, however, Hendrix did have a say in what tracks were to be used on the US version, but Reprise was insistent that Red House not appear on the album. They felt that the blues were dead in the US, and since his first 2 singles didn't chart well, they were already taking a bit of a risk by releasing this album. So it makes sense that they didn't want to take any chances with material that in their mind wouldn't fly with American audiences. And to be honest, I'm okay with that. Don't get me wrong, Red House is a fantastic blues tune, and his guitar playing is top notch, but it's just not my favorite song of his. Maybe it's because I heard it too much growing up, but I can never get into it now.
There's a red house over yonder. That's where my baby stays.
As far as the other 2 songs that were cut, I'm totally cool with that too. Can You See Me is probably the closest he gets to a 60s pop rock song. It's not bad, but it makes sense why this isn't a timeless classic like some of his other songs.
Can you see me? Yeah. Baby, you are my need.
And lastly, Remember is a decent rhythm and blues tune, but it's rather forgettable and not his strongest songwriting effort.
Oh, remember the bluebirds and the honeybees. They used to...
Side 1 on the US version opens with Purple Haze. Oh, this is such a raw, in-your-face guitar riff. It demands to be heard. I mean, this is how you open a debut album. Granted, the UK version opens with Foxy Lady, and that's good, but this is Purple Haze. This is what you remember Hendrix for. Hey Joe takes the number 3 spot on side 1, and it's good. Not my favorite tune, but maybe it's one of those songs I heard too many times, and it plays a lot on the radio.
Hey, Joe. Where you going with that gun of yours?
Side 2 opens with The Wind Cries Mary, which is one of my all-time favorite Hendrix songs, tied with Castles Made of Sand. It's a beautiful track, and it's a testament to Hendrix's depth as a songwriter and musician. For me, this is poetry. It's a beautifully interwoven tapestry of music and lyrics. No joke, this is one of those songs that really propelled Hendrix above the crowd in my mind.
The wind whispers, Mary.
I'm just gonna come right out and say it, the US version is a more consistent, complete album experience. I think that Reprise inadvertently created a near perfect psychedelic album by taking off what they did and including the UK hit singles. So yeah, my vote is for the US version of Are You Experience. Besides what I've already said, the US album benefits from the UK version being released 3 months prior. Reprise was able to see chart success in the UK and figure out what was going to sell in the US. In the end, I think they made the right choices. They took out songs I don't really care for and put on songs that I love. The UK album is good, but I think the US version is a better picture of what Hendrix is known for. Think of it this way, the UK is version 1.0 and the US is 2.0. Now, if you're looking to pick up a copy, original US stereo pressings are really easy to come by, but of course you will end up paying a premium for condition. I'll add that the recent 2013 and 14 reissues are excellent and they are available in both the US and UK versions. They sound great and they come on heavyweight vinyl. Now, if you're looking for the best of both worlds, might I suggest the 1997 MCA pressing, which combines the tracks from both versions plus the B-side singles onto one double LP set. It features the US track order and cover art and was reissued again in 2008. If you prefer the UK running order and artwork, a similar edition was also released in 1997 and again in 2010. They each run about $30 in the wild. Now, in terms of mono or stereo, I'm going to leave that up to you guys, but my 2 cents, I like the stereo. I hadn't heard a lot of these songs in mono before, and I found it very interesting how different a song can sound with just one channel, but for the most part, I like stereo more because I feel it gives the music some more space. It's also what I'm used to hearing, and also I really like a lot of the effects that they were doing with the stereo panning. It didn't come off as cheesy, and I just found them really interesting. So if you're looking to pick up a UK copy, I would stick to mono, not only because original pressings only came in mono, but the stereo used for Germany and most of Europe was an enhanced stereo or fake stereo. The best version apparently is the 1967 French pressing on the Barclay label. It's got an awesome cover and apparently has the best mono mix. Whichever version you prefer, this is a timeless classic, a fantastic debut by one of the greatest guitarists and songwriters who ever lived. If Hendrix only ever released just this album, he would still be remembered today. He would go on to release 2 more albums with the Experience and then a final live album before he left us all too soon. It makes me wonder what kind of music he'd be making today. Well, I want to hear from you guys. Which version do you prefer? Let me know if you agree or disagree with me and why. If you have a favorite vinyl pressing, let me know that too. As always, thank you so much for watching. I am your Vinyl Geek, and I'll catch you on the flip side.